Hello, and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I would like to share with you more information I received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH hypnosis session. I'll be reading from a transcript, as always, of the session. And when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm referring to my practitioner who's asking me questions I prepared in advance of the session. And when I refer to me, I'm referring to myself under hypnosis, which means the answers are coming from the 25th. This particular session was recorded on the 5th of December of last year. And it's a little bit different, even though today's video marks the beginning of the session. If you have seen any of my previous sessions, you'll know that initially the 25th always gives us a vision or a message that basically explains what is of uppermost importance for them to show us, and or answers questions that we have been working on, or that I might have been working on, but again, I'm never the only one doing a certain type of work. So these messages are always universal in value, in the level of information that they bring across. However, today's initial message was a little bit different because I had something quite emotional for me happen in the morning, that morning, before I basically went under hypnosis. So they basically answered. They were comforting me. They were putting things in perspective the way only they know how to do. And so I wanted to share what they said with me. It was very brief, but basically just to tell you. So again, something that happened to me where I felt very emotional. It was something that has to do with my family. Everybody's okay, but you know, it's tough because you're carrying forward a lifetime of things that are very low vibration, just like our entire reality has been low vibration. And eventually something gives, something breaks. We all want more. So even though my family is no longer there, their essences are gone, the issues that come up, the relational issues that come up, are still very real, because we want to believe that they are still here, these people. I know that I do, and I know I'm not the only one. At any rate, so I was emotional when I went under hypnosis, and the 25th said to me, they only said this, they said, it's finished. It's finished. It no longer is. And I wanted to pass this on in case you find yourself in situations that are just unfortunate for whatever reason. And this phrase that the 25th has said has actually carried me through a lot of other stuff as well. Because the truth is that I know it's finished. I know, for example, that people are no longer there. And it's good to know, it's comforting for me to know that we're done. None of this is real anymore. And so these people are actually happy somewhere. So I don't need to worry about them. All right, so I wanted to pass that on, and I'm going to start reading here. So Lorrayne, did we try resets on the other 3D planets? And she is referring to the 3D planets that were as enslaved as we have been on this planet. There are the 3D planets. We've been told that basically all the 3D planets in the multiverse have been enslaved because to something or other. In our case, it was money. The other 3D planets were enslaved by AI. This is because the dark has done so much better than the team of the light at playing the game. So all these realities have been negatively polarized, even though none of them have been as negatively polarized as ours, but bad enough for them to be enslaved. And so basically, I wanted to know if we had tried resets on those planets, just like we tried on this planet, which actually, if you remember, resets are one of the reasons why polarity got even more negatively polarized so quickly on this planet, because when we came up with the idea, the dark ran with them. And we just stopped because obviously we couldn't reset every other day, which makes no sense to me. If I have a question about this, so hang in there. I'm just very curious about why this particular planet has become such a basket case, where the other 3D planets, yeah, enslaved as they have been, they've never really gone above the 60% polarity where you call for a takedown. Whereas we here, as I mentioned in my previous session, we've gone to peaks of 70 to 80% darkness, which is crazy and unheard of. And we know what that has looked like here. So Lorraine's question, do we try resets on the other 3D planets? Me, we have not. We've not tried resets on the other 3D planets. Lorrayne. Clea adds, it seems unfair that all 12,000 came to Earth once we decided on a takedown, so there were none left to rebalance things on the other 3D planets. Can the 12,000 help other planets while they're working on one? Me. Yes, we can. Yes, many times we already said the 12,000 were helping with planet Earth, even while they were incarnated elsewhere. Of course, we are everywhere. But we would also like to complete the answer to the previous question in Clea's mind, which is, why did we not do resets on the other 3D planets? And the reason we did not do resets there is because somehow they always lag behind us in terms of the polarity, the imbalance. And therefore, we kind of tried things here, and right away here, as we tried the resets, we realized it wasn't a good idea. And therefore, that's why we didn't do the same thing on the other planets. But yes, so to answer the specific question, yes, the 12,000 are able to help. Now, of course, we already said the 12,000 are able to rebalance the energy or the vibration of an entire continent, of entire countries, just by being incarnated in a certain country. And that's why when the situation became dire here, we called for the takedown. Everybody eventually reincarnated here because it was really an all hands on deck kind of situation. And also we saw that the polarity was getting lost more and more. So obviously that's the ultimate thing that the 12,000 can do is incarnate, all incarnate on the same planet. And so, yeah, we also knew that we had to take care of this. This was a unique situation in the multiverse. And we kind of did not put the same amount of focus on the other planets, but we also have helped them. We are able to act on different planets and not just on the other 3D planets. We've actually helped the entire multiverse while we're focusing on planet Earth. And so we don't have to be incarnated basically in a place to balance things out or do what we know how to do. So we can work on multiple projects, if you want to think of it that way, at the same time. Lorrayne, thank you. How come those other 3D planets where the balance has been lost have been able to stay around the 60% darkness level, whereas we've dipped into the 70 to 80% range? Is it because of the resets used by the dark here, in combination with the fact that essences were coming here to experience the darkness and the takedown? So they supported the status quo? Me. Yes, so first of all, they're telling me the other planets were older actually than planet Earth. Not older, the planet, we already said planet Earth is about 9 billion years old. But they were on the planet. The civilization was on these planets longer than we have been here. So even though their polarity changed, it changed much more slowly. They didn't have as many traumatic events, like for example, in the case of the resets with us, which, as we've explained, actually contributed to making the polarity move into the dark territory much faster than we had done to date, because at this point, the dark knew that it was okay to use resets, and therefore, instead of being in a dynamic situation or a naturally flowing situation, that was gradually a gradual situation that was gradually turning to dark, all of a sudden, overnight, they could step up the imbalance by several points, which we already said how much of a big deal it is to have several points change in polarity. But yes, it's also exactly what Clea wrote in her question. What happened is at the moment we called the takedown, these essences wanted to experience this extreme darkness, because already around 60% dark, we already said that's already pretty extreme. And so, of course, that pushed more and more essences that were interested in experiencing the darkness to incarnate here. So, of course, they would be on standby, or they would be helping the dark if they were in the middle, because it's interesting. It's an interesting situation, as unhappy as it is from our perspective, as unfortunate as it is from our perspective, from a human 3D perspective. The other thing is that we also chose to, because again, we felt like, well, I mean, they're the ones coming up with most ideas, and therefore, you know, some of these are not as bad as others, so let's support them. So it was kind of a catch-22. We all, and we explained this before, we've all supported the status quo. And of course, it kept sliding and sliding. We didn't even try, you know, after a certain time, especially after you call for a takedown, it's not even natural to think about recalibrating at that point. You can't even do it anymore anyway, because again, the majority of essences that are here at this point want the darkness, want to experience this. And also because compared to the eternal life existence of an essence, this is nothing. We said even 300 years is nothing. It's the blink of an eye. So from a higher self perspective, it's not an awful trade-off to say, okay, well, it's dark, but I'm just going to do this for a little while, for a short amount of time. And of course, because we didn't know how long the takedown would take, how long it would take us to finally be ready to leave, we said this before, we didn't know which lifetime, in which embodied incarnation this would happen. So essences want to be here for the takedown. And because it has taken longer, we've had more of an opportunity to dip into more imbalance in favor of the dark. That's where we reach peaks of 70 to 80%. But if we, for example, had been able to do the takedown, say in a third of the time, we would have not reached certain peaks. But just because of the time it has taken, and again, it's not a matter of time, we use time as a measure, and this is what's happened. We reach incredible peaks of darkness that, again, have never been seen, not even close, have never been seen in the multiverse. We didn't even know what it would look like to have such peaks of darkness. Now we know, and now we know that we don't want to do this again. Lorrayne, thank you. You said the other 3D planets were close to 60%, while we were already at 60%. So that's why we called for the takedown here. But have they gone over the 60% mark since then, as things get darker and darker here while we were working on the takedown? Me. Yes, so they're telling me 62, and then they told me 65. Okay, so they told me they had times when they went to 62%, and one time when they went to 65%, which was a huge jump for them. But it was a very brief. They recalibrated from there very quickly. They very quickly realized that there was nothing good about it in terms of the fun that, it's just life felt very much changed very quickly when they moved to 65. Keep in mind, they've not had resets there. So what they saw is what you would consider your normal life all of a sudden get that much worse. Because a 5-point or a 3-point percentage point difference in imbalance is huge already. And so they saw that and they fixed that and they recalibrated that quickly. But so yes, then they were at 62% for a little while, but generally speaking, they hover around 60%. It almost seems like they've kind of found a pace there. And that's where they've capped it, which again is a big imbalance if you're outside the range. We already said the range is not 50-50, the perfect balance is not 50-50. There is a range. But even being outside of that range by a handful of percentage points is a big deal. We very much consider their reality to be negative, the same way that you would think of our reality here. It's just that they have no idea how much worse it could be, and good for them, because we definitely experience something truly imbalanced on this planet. Lorrayne, so this is an insert for me. So by doing the resets, we actually circumvented our own growth and understanding here and actually set ourselves backwards in the ability to balance ourselves. Is that correct? Me. Well, that is one way of looking at it, because in hindsight, you could say we should have not done the resets. Clearly didn't work. In fact, it made things a lot worse. But unfortunately, at the time, we didn't know this would be the case. We on the side of the light were also trying to be creative with the rules. And we don't mean creative as in breaking the rules, but using rules that were acceptable. And if you think about it, we've often said that the dark has always been very flexible with the rules. It wouldn't be flexible as in they disregarded them. However, they very quickly catch on if an idea is not really important to a population. They'll do away with it much more easily than we would. And so in our case, it was actually a good thing in terms of what we thought at the time that we would do these resets. We felt very good about ourselves. We're thinking, hey, we're participating. We're changing the game. This is awesome. We certainly had no idea how things would work out. So in terms of how you asked your question, yes, it was a shortcut. In hindsight, if we had rebalanced or if we had done the things that we are learning now, of course, none of this would have ever happened. We would have been able to rebalance to save the game. We think now that we would have been able, of course, again, now we're superimposing ideas or knowledge that we didn't have at the time. But very likely, this is the reason why we don't expect that we'll ever have to do another takedown. Very likely, had we had the knowledge that other things could have been done, we would have never gotten to this extreme that we have right now. So in this sense, I mean, you are correct. It was a shortcut if you want to look at it that way. But it was a shortcut that was meant for all of us to enjoy. And again, we know what happened with that. Lorrayne, thank you. Doing life reviews reminds Clea of the story some believe that after you die, you go to an in-between state where you review your immediate past life. Why do we do life reviews? Do we also do them at higher self level after we pass on from normal lifetimes when we don't have a takedown? Or is this happening because we're going to New Earth? Me. So the idea of a life review in New Age spirituality, which is what Clea is referring to, which talks about the experience between lives. Some authors or some people will tell you this is what happens in between lives, or some people that have done, or hypnotists that have done regression, where you do believe in between lives, that you will experience some sort of review. We've spoken about Michael Newton, for example, where there is a whole dynamic that happens, a whole process that takes place. And you review your life. You say, did I do well? Did I not do well? I had this mission. How did it go? So in that sense, life reviews, we already said, the afterlife, or what we consider to be the afterlife, doesn't have to look any particular way, because all it is, our essence is taking its focus away from a reality and focusing on something else, which is the same thing we do during nightly sleep. So it's not anything, there's no difference. It's not like we go through this process while we sleep, do we? But again, if you believe that that process is something you have to experience after you pass on from this place, great. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. But basically, in that sense, life reviews, no, you don't have to do life reviews. If you think of life reviews as where you judge yourself, you look at what you did, you had a goal, and did you do well? It's almost like you're grading yourself. Did I fail? Did I do excellent? Was I somewhere in the middle? I got a 7 out of 10, I'm rating my existence here in this lifetime. If that's what you're thinking of as life reviews, then of course that doesn't happen. We're laughing. It is kind of funny to think of the essence saying, am I a 7 or an 8 out of 10? It's cute. Also, because we already said a million times, the higher self does not come into this existence, for example, at a 3D level, thinking, I have a mission. We focus on these planets because we want to have fun and try something new. So there's nothing that you have to learn, you have to accomplish. Now, of course, we come in, and to give meaning to our lives here, we think we have certain missions. We talked about this, but it's not really a mission. It's really a preference. Like Clea's always thought, my mission is to spread messages. She's always wanted to be an author since she was a few years old, but it's not really a mission. It's just a preference. She likes to communicate, spread ideas, and that kind of thing. So that's all there is to it. You can think of it as a mission, and that's perfectly fine. But again, it's not really a mission at the higher self level. So in that sense, life reviews, no, we don't do that with the purpose of saying, how did I do? Now, to instead focus on what we're doing right now. The life review process that we are doing right now has to do with the fact that we are learning to accept ourselves. We are learning to be less judgmental for many things. Now, we already said it's very hard here. The energy is very dense. Judgment is very much par for the course here, because we still believe that we have to keep it in place to maintain this reality. And that's fine. We already said it was a misunderstanding, that it wasn't really necessary. But this is how we played the game, so it's what it is. Now, why are we doing these life reviews though? Because we are learning. Because remember, the work we are doing now is meant to bridge the gap of the awareness that we will have on New Earth. Of course, we're not going to have the same awareness here that we'll have on New Earth, because it would be impossible. We would not be able to take it. We would just not be able to handle the emotions surrounding the full knowledge of what's happening here. So that's why we insist on keeping this veil in place, even though the veil is very, 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 very thin right now. And they were laughing. But basically, these life reviews, in this sense, what they're teaching us is that we are putting in perspective, from a conscious perspective. This is the important part. From a conscious perspective, we're putting in perspective a lot of the stuff that's happening in our current lifetime. And for some people, the people who have finished this process, like Clea, for example, she's putting in place some of her, what we consider here to be previous lifetimes. We already said there are no past lives, but that's what we mean. Basically, we're trickling down a different perspective of things, how things have happened here. And this is, if you're putting 2 and 2 together right now, this is the bridge to knowing everything that's happened here. Because now, not only we have seen ourselves have all these different experiences, but we've also, some experiences are not so bright and light and fluffy. And we realize we are all one, because you understand, in dream state, we have the same emotions that we have here. The emotions are very clear. You cannot resist them, as in you cannot reject them. That's what we're trying to say. You cannot reject your emotions in the same way or you can ignore them or compartmentalize them in the way that we do at conscious level. And that's why a lot of this information comes through dream state, because you actually see what it is. You see how you feel about things, really, not what you like to think of how you feel about things. That's what we said many times. We know that you're working on this, Lorrayne, and if you truly want to know why we're keeping this in place, ask for it to be shown to you in dream state, and you will, just a little, just to see where you are with things, and you will know how you feel. You will truly know how you feel about things. It's basically your direct connection, and we're always connected, but your direct conscious connection. If you allow it to happen with your higher self, that's when your higher self is telling you what it's working on and what is important for you to say. And I'm going to read this note that I made here after transcribing this passage. Having gone through this process of conscious life review for many months now, I have to tell you that it does put things in perspective. In case you're not experiencing this at a conscious level yourself, even though we are all doing this, even if behind the scenes, I want to describe it to you a little bit. You basically have random life events come up from your past, quote unquote past, whether you're dreaming or awake, and you realize why they happened, and you clear them to some extent. It's almost like you put a check mark next to that one line item and move on to the next. For example, I will have a person pop up in my memory from when I was a child that I've not thought about since I was in grade school. And the scene that comes up about them might be completely inane or unimportant on the surface. That kind of thing. And even though this might not mean that all of a sudden you fully understand or accept what happened, you somehow have recalibrated or integrated that experience, and you move on. This person or experience does not come up again. As for past life reviews, I get dreams where I have a different life and feel all the emotions of that life. And I somehow know it was me in a previous lifetime. I had one recently that was very pleasant. I was very happy in that lifetime, and this has helped me find comfort that all in all, in balance, perhaps there will be something to comfort me from the PTSD I got here once we move on to New Earth. I wanted to share this with you because, again, we're all doing similar work, but we're doing it different ways. So you might not be going through the life review process or the dream process like I am, which, again, there is no right or wrong way to do this. So it all works out. But in case you're curious to see how that feels or how that looks like, just want to share this with you. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.